All right, we want to welcome everyone who's here.
I'm here. You look a lot like my brother. Oh, wait,
here.
you are my brother. So
That's right. We're here.
If anybody else is there, type in the chat. Tell us who you are and where you are.
Where in the world are you? New York. Mary Jo from New York. Angola. Kevin from San Jose. Hugo from Angola. You from Provo.
That's right. I think Hugo is our first ever attendee from Angola. We're honored to have him. And of course,
right.
Mary Jo from Amherst, New York. That's not Amherst, Massachusetts. That's New York. I'm insulting you, Mary Jo, by even saying it. Stu Kent from Idaho Falls. That's good.
As you join, if you would, put your name in the chat and where you're from, where you're at, I guess, not where you're from. Two different things.
Well, where am I from? I'm from Grantsville, Utah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I remember you when you were a little kid. I remember
out.
seeing you there. That's right.
That's right.
So Jim and everybody else, just confirm you can see my slides, projects and introductory accounting. I just want to make sure we've got the slides up there so you can see them.
Got them up, yep.
Barbara from Connecticut. Great.
I need to know from Mary Jo and from Barbara, when are the leaves going to change typically back there? I love to go back there and see. I mean, you just got beautiful.
When do you usually go, Jim? About October?
First week of October, typically, but it depends on where you're going. Where in New England you're going. There's Joe from Pittsburgh. Barbara, when in the fall, is there a typical week or so when it happens, or does it depend on too many variables? Joe from Pittsburgh, yep. Okay, we just lost your mute's on. Is your microphone on the bottom green? Nope. Nope. Okay, try that. Nope, can't hear you. Okay, he's having technical difficulty here. Leave and rejoin. Trudy from Pennsylvania. Okay, leave the session and rejoin. Let's see how that works. Well, he's left and he's gone, and we're probably all better off for it. See if we can get Kay back. Courtney from Lincoln, Trudy from Reading, Pennsylvania. Patrick from Iowa. Salem from Springfield, Illinois. Salem, that's the first time in my life I've ever heard a name that as a first name. That's congratulations. Looks like Kay's making his way.
Can you hear me?
In.
Good.
Yeah. Paulette from El Paso's with us.
El Paso.
All right. Kay,
all right.
Let's get going.
Jim, give me a final sound check. We're all right? Hey,
Sure.
Welcome all you guys. And we give our thanks to 𝐤𝐭 for sponsoring this and letting those of us who teach accounting talk about projects in introductory accounting. We have had lots of fun and have created lots of interest among our students over the years using projects. So today we're going to show you some of our favorites. And just think about this. Think back on the days that you were a student. What do you remember from those days? And it's more likely than not that it's projects that you remember. Projects have all kinds of benefits that aid in grabbing the interest of those accounting majors. And for many of us, we're finding that accounting is becoming a more difficult sell. Other topics are attracting students. Should be ours, if truth be told. Projects are one way to do that. So a good project puts students in a more realistic business environment rather than the sterile classroom setting. Gives them messy fact situations. We're always talking about putting students in the midst of uncertainty, requiring them to deal with ambiguity. Well, a project is a good way to do that. Puts them working in groups, and as we all know, in the business world, you work in groups. And finally, it confirms to students that the content they're learning in our classrooms is relevant. So here are some ones that I remember. Jim, you remember this project from E.D. Hubbard about variable cost and absorption cost reconciliation?
I do remember that. In fact, I still have it. 40 years ago, and
written on papyrus or whatever they used back in those days. I did a project with some MBA students where they divided up into groups, and one token accounting student was on each MBA group, and that was an enjoyable time. I showed them how to manipulate the financial statements. It was great. Jim, tell us about that high school accounting cycle practice set that you did.
Well, that was 46 years ago. And my accounting teacher in high school, I was doing well in accounting, and he finally said, okay, I'll tell you what, if you'll do this practice set, when you finish this practice set, you can quit coming to class. Well, that got my attention right there. So it's the first night in my life I stayed up all night. He said, oh, it'll take you 3 or 4 weeks. First night of my life, I stayed up all night, and at 9 o'clock the next morning, I dropped it on his desk and said, I'm out of here. I'll never forget. That's what convinced me that accounting was for me.
And today in this session, we're going to show you a souped up version of an accounting practice set that really puts students in a realistic setting. And we'll do that in the second half of what we're going to talk about. Here are the projects that we're prepared to talk about. We've got material that you can have. 𝐤𝐭 will send the material out to you at the end of this session, so you can use any of these projects in your own classroom. We certainly won't have time to talk about all of these, but here are some of our favorites. So let's start with the Edgar search project. I typically use this with my introductory accounting students in their first class. They've been in class for about 3 weeks. And I tell them, I'm going to send you out to the archives of the United States government, and you're going to find the financial reports for Microsoft, Google, and Apple. And this is the exact, these are the exact instructions that I send them out, that I turn them loose with. And first thing I want you to notice is I'm taking my precious little accounting 200 students and sending them out to the web, which is a dangerous place. I don't want them to get lost. I don't want them to get frustrated. So you see here, I go item by item, do this, click on that, look for this number, look for this date. And I always, right before I post this for my students, I go through yet one more time and check it myself again. When you're sending students out on a project, you're kind of getting them out in the real world a little bit. So just make sure that you've thought through everything. So I go through it in some detail. And when they're done, I mean, they've gathered these numbers from Google, Microsoft, and Apple. They've computed a few ratios, debt ratio, return on sales, return on equity. I have them write a little thing of debt ratio. Do you think it's high or low? They don't know. It's their third week. And I don't grade them on knowing, I grade them on doing that. So that brings us kind of degrading. I should say something about this right now. With grading projects, here's my view. Jim, I think you share this view. This is not where I get my distribution to give my final grades. I just want every student to be successful and to be able to do this. And so I'm not going to nickel and dime them on how did they exactly compute the debt ratio out to the umpteenth decimal point. Did they do the project and did they make a reasonable effort? Then I'm going to give them full credit. Jim, your thoughts on that?
Well, we just had a comment. Courtney said, I had a colleague did an annual report project and ChatGPT could find
tell them
all
what
the
we're going to do with
answers.
ChatGPT.
And we're going to have our next webinar is going to be on how ChatGPT is changing the face of accounting education for this reason exactly. And we can either ignore it or embrace it. There are things we can do with ChatGPT, but to Kay's point, because ChatGPT is out there, students are all going to get the right answer. So there's no point in trying to get distribution on these little exercises. They did it or they didn't. And if they cheated, then they didn't learn anything. But we're not getting discrimination on that little exercise anyway. We're going to get it on exams.
And let me remind you, one of the big benefits, I think, this is going to grab the interest of the potential accounting majors who are the best students. The student who doesn't want to do it, who's going to copy off their friend. I mean, it's copying off your friend is easier than getting ChatGPT to do it for you. Whatever, let those students do that. But the students like Jim in his high school class, who was already interested in accounting, he did that project, that practice set, it grabbed his interest, and he is where he is today because that grabbed his interest. So yeah, we've got a whole webinar on ChatGPT, which I think is an amazing tool. Let's talk about computing Google's goodwill. This one, I don't do this after 3 weeks in the class. They have to know what goodwill is. So we're a couple of months into the class and they know how to compute.
Yeah, probably 8 or 10
Yeah, then they know how to
weeks.
compute goodwill. And we make the point that on Google's balance sheet, they don't have their own goodwill because it's homegrown. You only report goodwill when you buy it. But I have created this project for my students to say, well, let's estimate what it would be. So we go out to Google's 2022 balance sheet, get these numbers. Then I send them to a website. It's called Interbrand, and they've been around, I don't know, 30 years now, at least I've been looking at them. They estimate the values of the 100 most valuable brand names in the world every year. They do it every year. And so you can see the progression over time. Apple right now has got the highest brand value. I think it's 400 billion, something like that. So that gives us the brand value of Google, which is not reported in their balance sheet, but there's an estimate of it out there. Let's find out what Google is worth. That's the market value of their equity. So that's that instead of book value of equity, it's market value of equity. They can find that number. finance.yahoo.com is a good place to do it. With those numbers, I give them some assumptions to make. Again, this is kind of a scary project. We're estimating the value of goodwill that would be recorded if we were to buy goodwill and put it on our balance sheet. I don't have enough money to buy, if we were to buy Google, I should say, I don't have enough money to buy Google, but Jim, I know you're loaded, so you probably do have enough.
Yeah.
And here it
Not
is.
a problem.
Here's the estimate of what would be reported as Google's goodwill if we were to buy Google. We've got the reported assets. We've got that unreported Google brand value. We can put that in. This market value equity, this is from the start of this year. And here's one reason that we accountants don't like to report a company's own goodwill as an estimated value on the balance sheet. I estimate this value as approximately $500 billion. The unrecorded goodwill of Google. I just checked today. If we were to do this same calculation today, just a few months after when I got these numbers, it would be closer to $1 trillion because Google's market value has gone up. Market values change. So we accountants don't want to record things that change by $500 billion in just 4 or 5 months. But here's the thing, the world changes. So this is a nice exercise. My students go out, they're able to compute for themselves what amount of goodwill would be recorded with respect to Google if we were to buy Google, but also we can talk about why don't we do that? Well, a quick insight is that the numbers change so much. Your learning outcomes demonstrates to accounting students, hammers home the fact that the numbers according to GAAP are far removed from fair values. Here's the feedback I get from students. They're very pleased that they can actually do this with my guidance. They can do it without too much difficulty. Now, what would I do differently if I were to do this again? The next time I do this, I do a little sensitivity analysis. Next project. This one is a managerial accounting project, an exercise in job order costing. I tell the students to go to their favorite restaurant, tell me a little bit about the restaurant. This is, by the way, this is the way I find out about all the restaurants students like around town. I went to one just the other day that I read about in one of these reports. 𝐷 Burger. Jim, have you ever been to 𝐷 Burger? Students like it. I went there. I can recommend it. I have them write about the restaurant, and then they do this. I say, all right, as you're sitting in the restaurant, estimate what did the food materials cost? What was the direct labor cost? They all kind of know how much people make there, and they can see who's working. How about the overhead? This is where it gets difficult. And so I have to remind them, hey, you're going to have to make some estimates. And when they're done, they write me up a 1-page report. Here's the restaurant I went to. Here's what I ordered. Here's how much I paid. Here's my estimated production cost. So here's my estimate of how much profit the restaurant made on the food that I ordered. My desired learning outcome, give them experience with product costing in a real environment. Emphasize to them that accountants have to make estimates. You have to make estimates, and overhead is a good place to illustrate that. Feedback from the students, they love this. They love going to the restaurant and doing this project. What would I do differently? This one works pretty well as it is. It's a simple little project. Students go outside the classroom to their favorite restaurant, but they're implementing the stuff that we're learning in the classroom. They're doing product costing, direct materials, direct labor, and overhead in a real environment. And I don't have to create the projects for the numbers for them. They create them themselves.
And 2 points to what Kay's saying. One is, again, we're not going to get a lot of variance on this. We want them to go do it and experience how accounting affects the real world. In addition, for each one of these, we're very specific on instructions. Students don't want to go on a jungle safari. They want to know exactly what is it I'm supposed to do. So every time we do one of these projects, go to this website, do this, find this. So we walk them right through it so that even though there's a lot of uncertainty and estimation, they know exactly what they're supposed to do.
And this next one is one that lots of people do, the financial statement analysis. Tell us how we do this one. Jim and I have done this for years with an executive MBA class, but it also works the same in introductory accounting. But tell about the experience we have with our executive MBA students.
Yeah, what we do is we tell students, we put students in groups, executive MBA students in groups, and we have them, if possible, analyze in the group. They'll pick one of their own companies. So if there are 5 people in the group, they'll decide, okay, let's do my company. And then they'll go through, we'll tell them exactly, here's what the analysis is going to be. And then we have them come to class. We take an entire class session and just go. They'll give 4 or 5 minute presentations, and it's amazing what they experience. Most of them have never looked at the financial statements of a company, let alone it be their own company. And just the insights they take away, uh, it's as it says, it's the highlight of the season. It's the high
We
point of the
give them
class.
exact instructions. Here's what we want you to do. We tell them how we're going to grade it, everything, so that there's no uncertainty and they can just relax in their groups and do this analysis. And when they come to class, I mean, they go above and beyond the call of duty. Remember that one group
Yeah.
that they actually commissioned a couple of paintings of Warren Buffett because they talked about Warren Buffett, and they gave them
That's
to
right.
us as presents. So I don't know if that's taxable, Jim, if you get a painting of Warren Buffett, but we got an original artwork.
I'm not at liberty to talk about that, the
Give
tax
students a little real
consequences.
world practice with the financial statements and ratios, and orchestrate a fun end of course event. Feedback from the students: this truly is the social event of the season. They love this. Their groups have a great time with this. Jim, we do this every year. We always say, can we make this more complicated? And then we have to remind ourselves, listen, just because we did it last year, we have to remember they've never done it before. It worked great
They have,
last year.
that's
Let's
right.
do the same thing this year. Jim, we have just a couple of minutes.
That's
I want
right.
to do one more, if that's okay. This small business valuation. This one, you
Okay.
have to do this in the second accounting class because the students need to have taken their introduction to finance course. But if they've taken an introduction to finance course, here's what I have them do. I say, go out and find a small business, small local business, and estimate what you'd have to pay to buy the business. So they have to understand the financial statements. They have to understand discount rates and weighted average cost of capital and other things that they learned in the finance course. And I tell them, make sure that it's a passive process. You just watch the business. I don't want them bugging the owners of small businesses here in our college town. And then give me a written report and a 7-minute presentation. Not too long, just a little bit. And this also is the social event of the season. Here are some of the businesses that they've done. They've done a local ice cream company. One business, one student group estimated what you'd have to pay to buy a local mortuary. Every time I drive by this mortuary, I get the creeps because I know more about their business model than I'd like to. Yeah,
How much
that's
you
right.
could buy it for.
This 𝐒𝐭𝐮𝐤𝐞𝐧𝐭 Collage factory is a really interesting business. They close every day at noon because they've sold out by then. So evaluation of they value these businesses and they have the time of their lives. I tell them exactly how I want you to do it. Here's just a quick one small group estimated the value of a company that makes cookies and estimated its value at $11 billion. This is a fun one to talk about in class. Two guys from Logan, Utah started this company a few years ago, and these students are estimated that it's worth $11 billion. They did very careful analysis, a worst case, middle case, best case. They put a lot of interesting work into it. What they didn't consider is that most standard finance models assume that the business is going to last forever. I don't know if a chocolate chip cookie company is going to last forever. Desired learning outcomes.
Well,
Yeah,
this one's
get
tearing them
the
up.
students out in the community. Demonstrate that valuation is hard in this case. Feedback, they love this assignment. They also start to think that I'm some kind of valuation guru. So I often get emails from students say, hey, I got my business. What do you think it's worth? What would I do differently? This is perfect. It works for both undergraduate and graduate students. It gets students out there. Now let's talk about.
And again, on that one, it's important that they have
Yeah,
had
that's exactly
finance
right.
as well.
Now let's talk about an accounting cycle practice set. We've all had them. Jim told you about the one that I had, but we want to show you an amazing practice set. We've teamed up with 𝐒𝐭𝐮, who's been around, I think, about 10 years now, and their expertise is in making simulations. They started with making digital marketing simulations about 10 years ago, where they immerse the students in an online environment that pretty closely mirrors what it would feel like to be working in an online environment. And after COVID, we're all familiar with how that works. So 𝐒𝐭𝐮 has created an accounting cycle practice at a simulation. So if it's okay, Brent, if you're ready, Brent from 𝐒𝐭𝐮 Brent Davis from 𝐒𝐭𝐮 is going to illustrate how this works. So Brent, if you would take it away. Coming.
All righty. Thanks, Kay. I appreciate the intro there. As Kay said, really I think he used the term souped up practice set, right? With one huge priority, lots of priorities, but one, and that's engagement. How do we engage the student? How do we make it fun, but still realistic? Not overly gamified, but how do we make it engaging for the student? So let me set the stage real quick, and then we're kind of dive into the Simternship. The plot is this. The student's going to go to Hawaii. They're going to go to the beaches of Maui, and they're going to start a business. But they're not going to do it alone. They're going to do it with a business partner and mentor. And that business partner and mentor is going to help them along the way. They're going to rent paddle boards, rent body boards, and sell suntan lotion and sunglasses. And so it's a really kind of engaging setting for the student. And then there's 73 journal entries that follow the student throughout the Simternship. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and we'll show you more.
While you're doing that, for those of you who didn't hear me say it, the detailed description of all the projects that Jim and I just talked about, Virgil from 𝐒𝐭𝐮 will email a Word document that contains those exact assignments, and you're welcome to use them any way you want.
Fantastic. So, like I said, right, they're on the beaches of Maui, but they're not going to do it alone. The 𝐒𝐭𝐮 Simternships have a similar look and feel with regards to, we utilize an overview video, which is the introduction for the student. We, in this instance, heavily utilize the inbox for the student. That's where they'll get invoices and information that translate to a one-to-one correlation for the need of an accounting transaction. But we also try to immerse the student in the scenario. In this case, the business name is 𝐕𝐢. We've got core values for 𝐕𝐢, and we also give the student a good foundation on the chart of accounts. This is not your ordinary chart of accounts. This is a chart of accounts with a lot of student hints in it, in the sense of it will tell them like, hey, this might be an account we use for equipment. Hey, this might be an account we use for inventory, stuff we're going to resell. And so assets, liabilities, owner's equity, revenue, and expenses. And so that chart of accounts just kind of levels the playing field. We're utilizing these terms, these accounts. That way everybody is on the same playing field. The 𝐒𝐭𝐮 Simternships are split out in rounds. It's just a really simple way to dissect the information and also accomplish the learning objectives at hand. And so each of the rounds, in this case, has a set of tasks the student needs to do. Every single round has a scenario video, which you can see here on the screen. And I'm actually going to play this round one scenario video for you. And the business partner, this is the business partner and mentor that I mentioned. Her name is Reagan Keller. I'm going to go ahead and play that video so you guys can kind of get a sense.
Aloha! I'm excited for us to be in this new adventure as business partners. 𝐕𝐢 is going to be a huge hit for the locals and tourists. Let's get started with a few business items. As business partners, we'll work together, but we also have personal strengths and weaknesses in our partnership. I'm here to guide and advise you while you will run the day-to-day business operations. I'll send you the equity stakes contracts. Don't forget to review them to understand the equity split. You have a lot of tasks to complete this week, but I know you'll do great. I've secured business liability insurance and purchased the needed equipment and inventory. Be sure to make the necessary accounting transactions. I'll send an email with the invoices, so check your inbox for them. Also, I worked with a graphic designer to give us a few logo options. Select the one you like best. I feel they're all great. Oh, and before I forget, it's important to answer any questions that may come from future entrepreneurs, aspiring business owners, or former classmates who have questions about business and finance. These questions will be in the notifications hub. Use it as an opportunity to learn and network. Again, I'm excited to start this business with you. Best of luck.
So that is the first round video from Reagan, and it really sets the stage for the student of what their expectations are.
Brett, just a quick thing.
No.
I tried out for the part of Reagan Keller, didn't make the cut, so I'm still a little bitter about that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we went with a better option. Sorry, Kay. So as part of the simulation, and as Reagan mentioned, they're going to send you the invoices and send you the information that has that one-to-one correlation with an accounting transaction. So you can see here the inbox is full. It looks blue. Once you click it, it marks it as red, right? All of these different emails have attachments. These attachments can be downloaded very easily by the student, but the student can also get to these attachments within their resources. So I went there quickly, but down here on the right-hand side, there's a resources, and they can also access all of the information that they need to have in order to make the necessary accounting transactions. And we're going to do a few here, and I'll also mess up one on purpose. At least that's what I say, right? So I get out of trouble with Jim and Kay. But I'll mess one up so that way the audience can see the intelligence that's kind of behind the journal entry hub, which we'll see here in just a moment, and the algorithm behind the scenes. But as Reagan mentioned, we try to really engage the students so we can let them pick their logo. Does the logo matter in the end as far as the success of the business? No, but it matters to the student in the sense that all the reports they get from this point on will have the logo they selected, one of three options. We're just going to select an option here and then kind of move on. Journal entry hub. There's 7 journal entries in this first round. I've already done a few with regards to equity and PP&E. But let's do a couple real quick. Let's do one simple here. They got a bank loan from G.W. Shaw. If the student forgets what that looked like, once again, they can go down here in their resources and see, okay, receipt of funds, $5,000. Sounds good. So I know that, what we got cash. I'm going to start with the debit so nobody yells at me in the chat. The system will allow both ways. It is forgiving in that sense, but I'm going to go and do this. As you can see, once the transaction is balanced, which right now it's not, once I hit 5,000, it's balanced, this validate button illuminates. It allows the student to hit validate, and it says, hey, you'll be graded on your first attempt. Are you okay? You good? Did you review it well? I'm going to say yes, don't show this again, move on. And then it will say validation succeeded, and I'll be able to save the entry. And you can see down here on that entry now is on the bottom in the history. The student can access those historical transactions at any point in time to help inform what maybe a future transaction needs to look like. Let's do one more quickly, and then we'll get into the nuance where I said I would do one improper, and that way you all as professors know how the system reacts. All right, so let's do prepaid insurance. In this case, we got $6,000 of insurance up front for 6 months. From Standard Insurance, and I'll just show you here where that is. There's the insurance invoice from Standard Insurance. We took a very detailed approach, obviously, right? We created companies, we created their logos, we created addresses, we created these paid in full versus partial payment stamps that you'll see. All very important things to, once again, immerse the student in the engaging experience. And so we'll validate this transaction and save entry. So now I'm going to do one more, and this would be the last journal entry we do on this live demo. but we'll get into the other rounds. But I wanted to show this piece, and the reason why is I think it's important. I'm going to do this incorrect. So we're going to go to the inventory invoice here from Sunny Approved. We have $6,000. We paid $2,000, and we have $4,000 left. Everybody on the call knows this is a 3-line transaction. However, I'm going to do it in 2 lines and see what the system tells me. I'm going to say we paid cash for all $6,000 of inventory, and I'm going to validate the transaction. And it's going to say red box, incorrect credit. And then down here, it's going to give the student a big hint. This journal entry must have 3 accounts, right? Then I'm going to remember, oh, okay, never mind. We didn't pay for everything up front. We still have $4,000 of AP, and we only paid $2,000 of cash. Validate, and sure enough, it succeeded. We save the entry, and we move on. That is the inbox and how it relates to the journal entry hub, okay? Now, it's important to show, okay, what kind of results did the student get? And so I'm going to come over here and show you the part 1, round 1 results. Sure enough, across the top are all 7 transactions the student does in round 1. And each of those transactions has, sure enough, a business partner feedback, which is really 𝐤𝐭 working with Jim and Stice, so saying, give us the elevator pitch of how you would explain this transaction to a student very concisely. And so in this instance, you can see here, first we look for cash. Cash went down. Cash goes down with a credit, right? Little nuances here. Down here, we say later, we have a liability. Liabilities increase with credits. So we have these phrases that show up throughout the Simternship to really drive home the point of how you move certain account types up and down, debit and credit. All right. So now we're gonna move on.
Hey, Brent, can I insert one
Absolutely.
thing? Brent suggested when it comes to journal entries, you can do the credits before the debits. And as an accounting purist, that always bothers me. But QuickBooks and other accounting software out there allows that. So what 𝐤𝐭 has done here is tried to mirror what the real world does. And while I'm fixated on debits first and credits second, the truth is it doesn't matter which order you do it in. And the accounting software out there allows students to do it in any order they want. So 𝐤𝐭 has simulated that as well, which is cool. Still bothers me, but it's cool.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jim. That's exactly, it's a perfect explanation. Yeah, we were simply trying to mimic the reality of the student in which once they get out of school, how they would likely see it in different ERP systems. So round 2, let's move forward a little bit. I've got about 10 or 12 minutes to get you through the end of this. So round 2, inbox. Remember that logo they selected? Well, there you have it. The next round, they get their invoice, right, for surface level design. But I want to focus on something different in round 2. They'll do some journal entries, but here's where they'll select the location. You know, there's some creative folks here at 𝐤𝐭, and a lot of these names I have a hard time pronouncing, so I'm not going to try. So these are the 3 different locations. Here's the advertising packages, both Annie Lynn's and Pristine Productions. Why am I showing this, and why is this important? 1, student engagement. But 2, this controls the answer key. There's 6 different answer keys for the Simternship, and their selection here just determines the answer keys. Anything from sales reports to income statement to balance sheet, there's 6 different versions. But it also, an unintended consequence, so I can't take credit for it, but it actually lends itself well to group activity or group collaboration. So let's just say you have 60 people in your class, 60 students. If you wanted to do groups of 10, you would dictate how the students selected in round 2, and then they would be able to work together, but still individually submit their answers. So it does lend itself well to collaborative group effort as well, should the professor choose to do that. Let's move forward to round 3. So in the first 2 rounds, business isn't even open. You're pre-revenue. In round 3, business is open. Right? And they even have an inbox from Reagan saying, hey, we're open for business. Congratulations. Your hard work's paying off. Well, business is open means now we have more journal entries, obviously, pen and paper supply company. They got to buy pen. They got to buy paper. They got to buy dry erase boards, everything that you can think of on that invoice. But here is a sales report. We show them what their sales report looks like. They run their sales report, which I've already done for the interest of time here on the bottom right. And then it automatically comes back up to your inbox, and the student can now download their sales report. And that sales report looks like such: rental revenue, sales revenue, cost, right? This helps them with the journal entry as it relates to making sure they document their sales and their COGS. And so let me show you kind of what that journal entry looks like briefly. For instance, in week 1, here's their sales entry. They even get an email reminding them, hey, don't forget about that accounts receivable. There was $1,100 that somebody did on account. So here's your sales report. Here's your week 1 COGS. Week 2 sales report, a little simpler, no AR entry. And your week 2 COGS, cost of goods sold. In the first month, the student does their sales entries week by week by week. And so that's important because we felt like that repetition really hammers home the learning objective and the concepts. Also, in the first 5 rounds, the Simternship is weighted extremely small, really, really small. In the rounds 6 through 11, the weighting of the rounds goes up. And so that's intentional to give the student really a good practice at this, because this is likely the first time many of these students have seen this type of transaction. And so we'll kind of skip forward here. In round 4, there's some fun stuff the student does. There's a few little curveballs here and there, but once again, we use that inbox to really step them through the process the best we can. But I want to get to round 5, and the reason why is month-end adjustments. I'm sure somebody would have chatted had I not done this, if, hey, do you do adjusting entries? And the answer is yes. We do monthly adjusting entries because we felt like practice is really important on the adjusting entries. Let me show you what those adjusting entries look like. For instance, rent. Remember, there was 3 different locations. There's 3 different rent amounts. So everyone's adjusting entry is slightly different, as is their sales report and other things. Insurance, they prepaid for 6 months up front. They need to expire $1,000 of that. In round 2, which we in round 3, I apologize, we didn't do it. There was a business license. They need to accommodate for that as well. $720 a year, $60 a month. Depreciation, I'll come back to that one. Office supplies expense. We tell them, how would they know? How would they know how much office supplies expense they had? Well, we tell them in their month-end notes, hey, based on a recent office supplies account, there's 150 left of the 500. Well, if the student's reading, they should know that that means their entry for their adjusting entries for office supplies expense should be $350 the expense and remove $350 from your asset account. Depreciation. We originally had $25,200 in PP&E. A customer convinced the student to sell a board, and they did a gain on sale entry. So they had $1,200. They had $1,500 cash, $1,200 to PP&E, and $300 to gain on sale. So they had to make that adjustment. It was intentional because it left $24,000 of PP&E left, divided by 24 months, a 2-year useful life. A nice round $1,000 a month depreciation. So that's your kind of month-end adjusting entries. That's the first month of Carly's, of WaveGear. I'm getting confused because Carly's is our financial statement analysis that I'm building now. But that's your first month of WaveGear's operation.
Brett, let me insert this again to emphasize the point. We all know that when financial statements are made, we make adjusting entries. But in this case, one of the points of the simulation is to let them practice adjusting entries. So even though we're not going to make financial statements until the end of the quarter, we wanted them to practice at the end of every month making adjusting entries. And I know that's not a reflection of real life, but we want them to practice journal entries. So we had them do it 3 times. And we're only going to do closing entries 1 time. Right. But they needed to practice.
Right. It's a perfect lead-in because now I'm going to quickly, round 6 is all of month 2. So now in graduated learning approach, the student does all of month 2 and round 6. Doesn't mean there's more journal entries. Matter of fact, round 4 has the most journal entries at 13, but it's just the entire month. They get 1 sales report for the entire month. Round 7 is the adjusting entries for month 2. Round 8 is month 3, and round 9 is the adjusting entries for month 3. Just to kind of go through round by round, so I didn't skip any rounds. I did want to get to round 10, and round 10 is important because that's when we do exactly what Jim was referring to, and that's the financial statements. And so let me kind of show you how that works when the student first comes to the round. The student will get the inbox. They'll get the scenario video. I can't state enough that they get a scenario video from Reagan every single round, setting and managing those expectations. They have an income statement piece here where they'll drag and drop. Is this scored? No. This is literally an exercise to remind them what goes on a balance sheet or on an income statement, and where does it go? If it's red, it's wrong. If it's green, it's right. And you've got to get 3 here and 12 here. Pretty simple. They'll then run the report once they get everything all situated, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. Here, remember that logo they selected in round 1? Well, there you have it. Top right of the screen. So the student feels some ownership, like, oh, that's my logo, right? I selected that in round 1, and now it's on my income statement. And so they'll do this drag and drop for the income statement. And remember, there's 6 different versions of the income statement based on their selections in round 2. They'll also do a drag and drop for the balance sheet exercise. Current assets, long-term assets, current liabilities, long-term liabilities, and owner's equity. Pretty standard stuff. There's that logo again. But why are they doing this? Well, 1, they're closing entries. They're closing on a quarterly basis. But 2, the ultimate goal is they're having success at 𝐬𝐬𝐢, and we need to go to the bank and maybe get some extra money. And now that brings us to round 11. And that's the why. Well, first of all, in round 11, we're going to do a few ratios. I'm not going to do them here. I'm going to show you kind of what happens here, but they will use those balance sheet and income statement, and they will enter their assets and liabilities. Current ratio, debt ratio, return on equity. We have a whole nother Simternship we're building for financial statement analysis that goes way deeper than this. However, for this case, this is the lead-in. This is just a little tip of the iceberg with regards to some basic ratios. They'll enter those ratios, they'll validate the ratios, and then after the validation is correct, this piece here down at the bottom will allow them to simply analyze their ratios. How well do you think they're doing? How do they know what's good and what's bad? Remember that inbox, right? We tell them. We give them, hey, here's the ratios, and here's kind of where they need to be. And so we're not going to leave them out on an island by themselves. We really coach them throughout the process. They will then select how they feel and average, overperform and average, right? And they'll move on. With that, they'll get feedback from the bank. The feedback up to this point was from Reagan, the business partner. And now we disguise the feedback, not from Reagan, it's from the bank. You just submitted your kind of financials to the bank to give for some loan. It says, hey, as your dedicated business banker, I wanted to give you some feedback. And so this is still a small business in the grand scheme of things. So their business banker feels okay with giving some feedback. And that's how we've done it. That is the accounting cycle or financial accounting Simternship for the accounting cycle focus. And when it's all said and done, they'll get a nice certificate like this. It says, Brent, you played through this 500 times, and I'm glad you got the right answers, right? Thankfully, I'm able to get through this at this point because I played it a lot. And so that is our accounting cycle Simternship. I wanted to answer a few.
Just a quick point.
Go ahead.
I really like what 𝐬𝐭 has done with the simulation right at the end, because it's too easy for our students and for us, for that matter, to get excited about the accounting cycle and the debits and credits and the trial balance and the closing entries. But the way this simulation ends is, okay, you did that to get these financial statements to then take to a bank. We don't do the accounting cycle and the debits and credits just to do them. There's a business purpose, and often that business purpose is to seek financing from an outside source. So I really like the way that it ends on a user focus. It's a great simulation.
And I will add this. Brent said there are 6 scenarios, and some would say, why 6? Why not infinite? Some students are going to come to you with a question, and you'll have an answer key for 6 possible outcomes rather than an infinite possible outcome. So we thought a lot about how many outcomes should we have. If everybody gets the same one, it's too easy for everybody to work together. And so we wanted to have a certain number of outcomes, but not an infinite number of outcomes. Brent, the question in the chat is, what's the instructor able to see? Can they see what a student has done?
Yeah, I saw that question. So you can see here on my screen, I have a course played where I'm the only student. But in this case, let's say you had 200 students. You would have 200 students listed here. But I'm the only student here. One thing I wanted to add to Jim's comment real quick about the answer key. The instructor has to ask the student 2 things. What location did you pick? And what advertising package did you pick? The instructor doesn't even actually have to go into this point if they didn't have the time or need to. If they know the answer to those 2 questions, they'll have a PDF copy of the answer key for everything for that student for the remainder of the Simternship. So back to that instructor portal is what we call it here. This is where you'd be able to see where a student's at. In this case, I've finished the course. Had I not finished their course, there would be a little pencil on the round in which I'm currently working. You also will be able to show them as aggregate scores or percentages. And you can see, remember I said in the first 5 rounds, it's not worth much, 20 points a round. After that, 100 points a round. That's intentional. But this is the part where a professor can even help a student and push them back around if they so need. If a student wants to retry a round, they can push them back around. Or they can select any of these rounds and see how the student did in that round. In this instance, I got a 93.47%, which is likely embarrassing considering I should have known the right answer. But there we have it. So this is that instructor view that gives the student, the instructor, kind of a one-stop shop. Before someone asks, how long does it take? Stu-Kent Simternships typically are about 45 minutes to an hour a round. I would expect a student to be able to get through this Simternship in about 8 to 11 hours, somewhere in there. You're going to have students that go through it quicker, and you'll have students that maybe take a little longer time. But in order to properly read through everything, your average student's probably going to be 8 to 10, 8 to 12 hours.
Brett,
it takes me about 2 hours, and that's clicking as basically as fast.
Brett, along with that, when in the course, well, we view this as being a review of what they learned in the accounting cycle. So if you've done journal entries and adjusting entries in weeks 3 or 4 or 5, that's about when you'd start this Simternship. And in our view, you'd maybe have students run it for a couple, 3 weeks. Just as they get ready to launch into the rest of the course, they've hammered home their knowledge of the debits and credits and adjusting entries before they get into the higher parts of the course.
Yeah.
And I would add this there. Students think, well, I've got to study for an exam. I don't have 8 hours to work on this. But I always tell my students, by doing this, you're actually studying for the exam. This is the Simternship is a great way to refresh how to do journal entries, how to do adjusting entries, how to do closing entries, which is going to be on exam 1. So this is a great way to study for exam 1.
Awesome. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Jim and Kay, for this. If we have other questions about the Simternship or about what has been presented, please throw those in the chat. We'll continue to answer those. I also wanted to pop up this on your screen here, where you can schedule a personal walkthrough if you have specific questions about the sim or the courseware, and you want to see those and get access to those and play through it yourself. You can do that through that link. go ahead and click there, and then you can request access or schedule a walkthrough. As far as cost, so our standard pricing for our courseware is $79.99, and for our Simternships is $69.99. There are a couple different variations for the accounting that includes this accounting cycle one that you've seen, as well as the financial statement analysis Simternship that was talked about, that we're just finishing up. And depending on your specific needs, go ahead and schedule a walkthrough, talk to one of our helpful course consultants for your region, and they can give you a more specific costs for your needs, depending on what your use is, whether it's just the sim, just the courseware, and they can answer those questions.
Oh, Virgil, just to confirm, someone can just buy this accounting cycle Simternship all by itself without anything else. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. We've designed it in such a way, and Brent and Jim and Katie have all been a part of that, but designed it in such a way that it can be used just by itself. And yes, that's $69.99 per student. And if you, like I said, if you bundle together, or if you use a variation, that cost can change. So make sure to talk with the course consultant for your area. And then Esther, yes, you can get a copy to review through that link that I shared. And we'll reach out to everyone as well after this and provide that as a resource. So you can get in, you can see the courseware, you can see all the projects like those that Jim and Kay talked about at the beginning of this, similar projects to those, as well as the Simternship itself. I think we answered most of the questions live. I know there was one about using this in an MBA level course. And I believe, well, just speaking from personal experience in my MBA program, when I went through, I didn't have this, and I didn't think I'd say this after graduating, but I'd love to go back and take that accounting class again using these tools that Jim and Kay have built, because they would make it much easier for me to understand and enjoy accounting.
And Virgil, I'll add one thing to that. In talking to the number of professors I have, I can tell you that it's a mixed bag. Some professors are actually utilizing this first accounting cycle as a refresher in an intermediate course, or a capstone project. 𝐤𝐭, I think, has done a really fantastic job of building this to where it can be flexible based on the needs of the professor that's interested in it. So I've seen various different ways and places that professors are interested in placing this in their course.
Thank you. And then, of course, ChatGPT was a popular topic at the beginning of this webinar, and Jim and Kay talked about their next webinar will be on that. I want to go ahead and share a link now. You can go ahead and register for that coming up later in August, just before the start of the semester. And we'll send out some more information about that as it's built out, but that'll be a great event that you'll definitely want to attend. And then we also have the presentation slides available for you. You can download, as well as those projects that Jim and Kay went through at the beginning. So those are on the right hand of your screen. You can download those. We'll also send those out in a post-webinar email to all of the attendees and registrants, so you'll have it there as well. Looks like we have another question from Jeff. Can there be more decision points for marketing and finance for the capstone?
Not at this point. At this point, they make certain choices, and we haven't, because it's designed for a introductory accounting class. We're not sure if they've taken finance yet, or if they've taken marketing yet. What I think Jeff's referring to is, after they've done multiple classes, can there be a capstone? That's something 𝐤𝐭 will think about. But at this point, they're all kind of independent, because we're not sure what order.
But that sure is an interesting suggestion, though, Virgil, because 𝐤𝐭 could create a package, a capstone package, a marketing simulation, an accounting cycle simulation, a financial statement analysis simulation, a finance simulation. So that's an interesting business idea. So thanks to Jeff for thinking of that one. He should get a commission of some sort for that idea. He won't, but he
probably
should.
won't, but he should.
And we do have a general business simulation that does go through marketing and finance and sales and HR and gives an overview of those, which is something that we can connect you with Jeff and see if that's something that would work for that. But yeah, great idea, great suggestion. Thank you. And if there's no other questions, thank you everyone for coming and joining us today. Thanks Jim and Kay for your presentation and showing those projects, and thank you Brent for walking us through the Simternship.
I want to give thanks. I want to give thanks to
hopefully
Brent. You guys have no idea how scary it is for an innocent person like Brent to do journal entries in front of a bunch of accounting professors watching him like a hawk. So Brent, thank you for putting up with us.
Yeah, I just have to shroud everything as an intentional mistake.
That's right.
Thanks, you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much. Thank you, Jim and Brent, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.